friends, welcome to the Point. In this session, we are discussing about conservation and management of forest. So, what is this forest? Forest, it refers to a land covered with many trees along with shrubs, herbs that contains thousands of life forms. So, these life forms, it also includes plants and animals. So, in general form, we can say that forest is a land with its vegetative cover that has been declared under a legal provision. What is the role of forest? Forest constitutes one of the major significant features of the land surface, and their prime source of energy is required for all the forms of life on the earth. The forest, it intercepts the solar energy and converts it into a food. So, what is the role of forest? So, forest provides food and many tribals survive in the forest area. Recreation, energy is present in the forest, it enriches the soil, it cools the atmosphere, oxygen carbon balance is done in the forest, forests provide medicines, revenue is generated by the forest, they support to agriculture, soil or water conservation is done in the forest, it protects the environment, it preserves the wildlife, employment is gained through forest, grazing animals husbandry is also being done in the forest, and finally industrial raw materials are obtained in the forest. What is the need for conservation of forest? Already man has been over exploiting the forest to satisfy his own needs and because of his own greeds, and as there is a rapid change in the population growth, there has been demand for the more food. Since for the agricultural land, forests have been cleared. Forest, it has converted into pasture land for expanding the dairy farming and as well as the cattle ranching. Overgrazing in the forest by animals in tropical and subtropical regions, it has resulted into large scale degradation of natural vegetation. Ever increasing demand for timber and for various purposes due to industrial expansion and urbanization, it has added to the problem of deforestation. Construction of multi-purpose river valley projects, it has led to submergence of land and destruction of forested river sites. All these factors, it led to the decline in the forest. As there is a decline in the forest productivity, the forest influence human environment by moderating climate change, regulating the water supply, maintaining fertility of the soil, and purifying air. Absence of the forest cover, it leads to soil erosion and it also increases load on the rivers. The increased surface load, it reduces the water in the rivers for human use. Let's discuss what are the strategies and methods of conservation of the forest. To reduce the deforestation and stop the diversion of forest lands for non-forest uses, the following conservation practices must be undertaken. Increasing the area under forest, that means loss of forest, it can be remedied by a massive program of tree plantations like celebrating Vana Mahotsav Day and so on. Plant the trees on degraded lands and also on the land that is unfit for agriculture, and so that it improves the environment and it relieves the harvesting pressure on the forest. The planting of trees along the sides of the road, railway lines, rivers and streams, canals and on the other unutilized lands should be encouraged, so that the green belts will be increased in urban and industrial areas. Stop indiscriminate felling of trees. There should be a ban on felling of naturally growing trees. No forest should be permitted to be changed without the government management plan. The government should issue the necessary guidelines to the state governments in this regard and monitor the compliance. If a tree has to be cut, necessary permission should be obtained. Besides, a proper replacement of the trees by planting saplings at least in the ratio of 1:10, that is 1 tree to 10 saplings should be undertaken. Establishing corridors between different reserved forests, that means wide corridors should be established in different reserved forests to allow the migration of wild animals. Using alternative source of energy. Many parts of the world, trees are being fallen and they are used as a firewood. So in order to conserve forest, we must use non-conventional or renewable sources of energy like solar energy, tidal energy, hydel energy, etc. Proper legislation and its implementations. There should be a strict laws to check the deforestation. Proper care should be taken to see that these laws are strictly implemented. Regeneration of forest. So these can be done by sowing seeds or planting seedlings, saplings or vegetative parts. A degraded forest, it can be reforested by plantation. Taungya system, it is an artificial method of forest regeneration. In this system, during the initial regeneration period, agriculture is practiced in the forest land, and in the next year, seedlings of the forest crops are grown in rows, and this combined cultivation of agricultural crops along with the forest crops in an alternative rows helps in speedy penetration and spreading of tree roots deep inside the soil. When seedlings are matured, farmers are allotted another cleared forest plot. Forest can also be regenerated by dispersing seeds from the sky through aeroplanes and helicopters. People's participation. Participation of the local community, it is the most significant if any plan has to be enforced. Most programs involve local communities in planning, decision making and implementation so that the local people take care of their environment. Technical methods. In order to meet the growing demands, it is necessary to enhance forest cover and its productivity. Production forestry programs, it aims at enhancing the forest cover in the country and it meets the national needs that should be oriented to narrowing the increasing gap between demand and the supply of fuel wood. However, it should also entail clear feeling of adequately stocked natural forest. Laws relating to conservation of forest. India is one of the few countries in the world which has a forest policy since 1894, and this forest policy, it was revised in 1952 and again it was revised in 1988. The objective of the forest policy is conservation, protection and development of forest. A number of acts like the Forest Conservation Act, the Environmental Protection Act, the Biodiversity Act, Wildlife Protection Act 1972, etc. many have been formulated for the conservation and for the management of forest. We will be discussing about these acts in the upcoming sessions. Grasslands. Grasslands, they occupy a very large area of land and within a certain continental interiors. Grasses and variety of herbs, they constitute the main vegetation of these grasslands. Grasslands are of two types, the tropical grassland and the temperate grassland. This tropical grassland, it is very close to the equator and it is hot all the year long. They are also known as savannas. These grasslands, it almost covers half the surface of Africa and large areas of Australia, South America and India. They are found only in warm or hot climates where the annual rainfall ranges from 50.8 to 127 cm per year. Temperate grasslands. These grasslands, they lie far away from the equator, that is in the temperate zone, where they face hot summers and harsh winters. Rainfall is moderate and occurs in the late spring and early summer. The major temperate grasslands are Velds of South Africa, the Pushta of Hungary, the Pampas of Argentina and Uruguay, the steppes of former Soviet Union and the plains and prairies of Central North America. Role of grasslands. Grasses, they have a great value for quickly covering the bare soil. Grasses protect the soil from erosion. It absorbs the rainfall and restores the soil fertility. Grasslands, they are an excellent source of food for herbivore animals and domestic livestock. Strategies and methods of conservation of grasslands. A grassland should be maintained to obtain a maximum livestock and production consistent with the conversion of grassland resources. Here are some conservation measures that are required for restoring the degraded and depleted grasslands. Farmers and herdmen, they should be taught how to rear the cattle. In order of having a huge number of cattle without having much profits, is healthy cattle, a selective healthy cattle maintained in a scientific way generates more profit. Provision has to be made to grow fast growing grass in order to feed the cattle. Different areas could be set apart in rotation for grazing purpose, so that each area has a time for grass to grow. The poor eroded soils can be enriched by applying organic fertilizers and reseeding to revive the grassland. Efforts should be made to control weeds, pests and predators. Regular burning of grasslands, it helps in enriching the soil for a fresh growth of grass. Laws relating to conservation of grasslands. The grasslands, they are the most neglected ecosystem. They are common lands of the community and they constitute the most productive ecosystem. They remain unprotected unless they are notified as protected areas under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 or notified as protected or reserved forest under the Indian Forest Act 1927. Semi-arid ecosystem. It refers to interacting system of biological community and its non-living environmental surroundings in regions that have between 10 to 20 inches of rainfall. Semi-arid ecosystem include deserts of Utah, Montana and Great Basins. All the three are present in USA. They also include Nearctic realm, that is North American, Newfoundland, Greenland, Russia, Europe and North Asia. Here the summers are long and dry. Summer temperatures of the semi-arid ecosystem, it averages between 21 to 27 degrees Celsius and normally it doesn't go above 38 degrees Celsius. It has a cool nights that helps both plants and animals by reducing the moisture loss from transpiration, sweating and breathing. The soil in the semi-arid ecosystem, it ranges from sandy and fine textured to loose rock fragments, gravel or sand. Semi-arid plants include whitethorn, catclave, muskwhite, brittle bushes, lyciums and jujube. These plants will have a spines which shade the surface enough to reduce transpiration. And many plants have silvery or glossy leaves which allows them to reflect more radiant energy. The animals in semi-arid ecosystem includes mammals such as kangaroo rats, rabbits and skunks, insects like grasshoppers and ants, and reptiles like lizard and snakes, and birds such as burrowing owls and California thrasher. Strategies and methods of conversion of semi-arid ecosystem. So, the main conservation strategies for maintaining and developing semi-arid ecosystem includes demarcating, strengthening, expanding and consolidating conservation areas, accessing the impact of natural disturbances, applying techniques to conserve biodiversity, supporting capacity building efforts that will promote the preservation and maintenance of indigenous and local communities. Integrated rural development on a sustainable basis, example range management that not only involves livestock but also agriculture, infrastructure, marketing, wildlife and tourism. Soil conservation and restoration of the degraded areas to conserve biodiversity. Natural resource management. This is a very important integrated resource, and with the conservation and development of this resource, the water resource and its distributions, grazing pressure and the deterioration of the vegetation can be prevented. Awareness of the conservation practices. The environmental damage, it is affected by the population growth, urbanization and industrialization, and in the increasing needs of energy and the fast technological advancement. Effective implementation of the environmental management and conservation programs, it depends on education, awareness and training in relevant areas. Without a understanding how to conserve a natural resource and compelling need to do, few people would be motivated to participate actively in the programs on environmental conservation, and therefore environmental education, awareness and training, it is very important scheme of the Ministry of Environment, and this is being implemented by establishing eco clubs throughout the country, giving training to master trainers, broadcasting weekly radio programs, telecasting awareness program on environmental conservation in television program like Doordarshan national channels, etc., organizing the environment and wildlife film festivals, and giving awards like the Young Environment Journalist and so on. Let's discuss why the involvement of local people is important for the conservation of natural resources. So, local people, they are important for the conservation and management of forest, but sometimes there is no opportunity for the people to participate in this process. Even though there is an opportunity to participate in the forest conservation, people would not use it effectively. This problem arises as there is a lack of awareness and the process is too complicated, and the problem in the local community due to social and economic problems. All these problems keep the people far away from conserving the forest. The indigenous and local communities, they manage the forest for a long time by a sustainable way. Their traditional knowledge includes lot of information about the nature surrounding them, and it is useful to improve natural resources management system. The Convention on Biological Diversity (CBD), it has some provisions to protect and apply wider traditional knowledge. It requires parties to promote wider application with the approval of the involvement of the holders of such traditional knowledge. This means those who want to utilize traditional knowledge have to open all information related to their plan to the local inhabitants and explain them precisely before they are receiving any consent. So, to encourage the equitable sharing of the benefits that arises from the utilization of such knowledge, innovations and practices, in general we can say that equitable sharing of benefits is equal to utilizing traditional knowledge between inventor and the holder. All the information that affects a social, economical situation, it should be shared, and this includes sharing of traditional knowledge, latest scientific findings, and how it is benefited by sharing their means, by sharing their cost equitably. Participation of the local community, it not only provides the labor force for environmental project, but also it reduces the cost production, which is improved utilization of resources. Then the environment is preserved and the benefits of the controlled use are reaped by local community. That's all for the session. Thank you.